Good afternoon, it's 4 p.m. We're bringing you the developing news and the stories behind the headlines. This is Storycon, I'm Regina Lay. Here are the stories we're watching this Monday, July 14. The PNP says possible human and animal bones were recovered from Taal Lake are now under forensic examination. The DNA samples from 12 relatives of the missing sabungeros have been collected for cross-matching with the remains. The search has also been extended by 10 meters from Laurel, Batangas. For its part, the Philippine Coast Guard has denied allegations that the bones were planted. And self-proclaimed whistleblower Julie Dondon Patidongan, alias Totoy, has filed charges against a policeman allegedly involved in the sabungeros' disappearance. The charges were lodged before the National Police Commission, or NAPOCOM. Patidongan named a certain Colonel Ryan J. Orapa, who allegedly received 2 million pesos per month from e-sabong operations. Patidongan also charged former NCRPO Chief Major General Jonel Estomo, who allegedly tried to have him killed. Malacanang has confirmed the irrevocable resignation of Energy Regulatory Commission Chair Monalisa Di Malanta. The police did not provide further details on her resignation, which comes after two other commissioners, Alexis Lumbatan and Catherine Maceda, completed their 7-year terms. Di Malanta's term was supposed to end in 2029. The Department of National Defense says its Secretary Gilbert Gibot Teodoro has already renounced his Maltese passport that was back in 2021 when he filed his certificate of candidacy for the 2022 elections. The DND says Teodoro disclosed the passport to the Bureau of Immigration, COMELEC, and the Commission on Appointments before his confirmation. The clarification is coming on the heels of reports that the defense chief is a foreign passport holder. Philippine laws, of course, prohibit public officials from holding dual citizenship. U.S. President Donald Trump has personally invited President Bongbong Marcos to a meeting at the White House. That is according to Foreign Affairs Secretary Maria Teresa Lazaro, and she noted that Marcos would be the first ASEAN leader to visit the White House under Trump's second administration. Lazaro also said Marcos will stay at the presidential guest house within the White House complex during his visit. The palace had previously announced that the president will visit the U.S. from July 20 to 22. The Bangko Sentral is tightening control over online gambling payments amid concerns about minors and vulnerable users having access to these platforms. In a draft circular, the BSP ordered banks, e-wallets, and other payment service providers, or PSPs, to add daily spending caps, time limits, and biometric verification. Under the same guidelines, PSPs must create a separate online gambling transaction account, or OGTA, with transfers capped at 20% of the user's average daily balance. Users may access the account for only 6 hours a day, with a 24 cooling off period for excessive use. Loan features in the app must also be disabled once the account is activated. The BSP is also banning financial institutions and their employees from participating in online gambling activities to maintain public trust. Platform operators must meet strict rules on licensing, ownership disclosure, and money laundering compliance. And violators may face fines of up to 1 million pesos and possible license revocation. These rules take effect 15 days after publication, with a 6-month window to comply. All right, and those were the top headlines. And joining me today, we've got my prompter froze. So He needs no introduction, but a resident political pundit slash heckler, Ronald Llamas.
Good afternoon, Reg.
Layo mo
Ha?
Ang layo mo today.
Oo, mahalaga may distance.
Para hindi kita maabot ganun.
Takot ako sa principal.
And also, we've got, of course, Editor-in-Chief, Ami Pamintuan. Hi, Ami.
Hi, Ami.
Hi, Reg, Ronald, everybody. Happy Monday.
Happy Monday.
Nakakatakot dalawang witches yung kasama mo nawala yung
Witches?
buffer. Nawala yung buffer ko.
Nawala yung kaalyado mo.
Kaya layo na upo mo, ha?
Oo, ang layo. Kita mo, hindi ko ba to? Hindi ka
Nakapaluin ka na ruler ni Principal.
Dapat dito, nandito si Mixie Miri para mag-witch hunt.
Oh, I see. So, sino yung witches kami?
Oo.
Oo nga, sino daw yung witch?
Doon sa sinabi niya,
witch
sino
sa
yung
witch
witch?
hunt?
Sino yung witch sa sinabi niya?
Ano?
Doon sa una niya sinabi, first time he said
Si
it.
Vice President.
Ah,
Wala namang witch hunt, hinahunt mo yung witch.
Oh, witch hunt. Sino daw yung witch? Tinatanong
Kaya
nga.
dapat magalit si Vice President.
Oo nga.
Di ba?
Dapat magalit si BP.
I don't
Who
think
you
that's
calling a witch?
I don't think that's how he meant for it to come across. Pero yun nga yung what people are laughing about right now. Okay, marami tayong updates. First of all, the president is going to the White House on the invitation of President
Yes.
Donald Trump. So this is great news. Kasi last week, remember we were talking about how parang medyo biglaan. Oo. Because usually pag state visit, weeks in advance, alam na natin yan. We would have heard details. But this one, in-announce lang ni Secretary of State Marco Rubio in KL. Tapos, I feel like suddenly things moved. Things got caught up in motion.
Una kasi may lumabas na letter, di ba? Yung letter na 20% tariff.
Oo.
Ikalawa, meron namang parating na SONA. So, gusto nila i-clarify. Anong ibig sabihin ng letter na yon? Parang very negative for us ang dating. Tingin ko, aayusin nila yon. Tapos, for the purpose of the SONA, bring home the bacon.
Yes, I think that's what I was gonna say. I think you're right.
Naayos niya.
Oo, mukhang 20% that's just a starting point for negotiation. Pero but really, they want to be able to say, oh, we'll take it down to, I don't know, 13. 10. 13.
So, maganda yung SONA
Parang
niya.
it sounds like a big win.
Diba?
Oo.
Lalo na kung wala ka masyadong sasabihin sa SONA.
Wala ba?
Kung wala masyado.
Wala pang proof points?
Oo, dahil baka yung mga hoarders tsaka mga smugglers uli yung kanyang babanatan. Possibly e-gambling. Tingnan natin kung anong sasabihin niya. Dahil parang may offensive yung kanyang mga tao sa e-gambling. Ano ba yan? Parang Pogo? Total e-gambling
Total
ban?
ban?
Ganon.
Mukhang mahirap because there's a lot of lobbying on both sides.
Sa Pogo rin naman, maraming lobbying.
Mas malakas yung online gambling kasi you're talking about entrenched businesses like Bloomberry, for instance, like Bingo Plus, Digi Plus. Now, these two companies
Pero ang dami-dami
are
na
listed,
ang dami-dami na nakapasok dyan sa e-gambling na hindi mo na malaman kung saan gagaling. You just look at your cell phones. Kung ano-ano na yung mga na-e-gambling na dyan. Tapos lahat sila nakalagay PAGCOR license. I'm not sure if it's true, ha? Lahat sila nilalagay nila were PAGCOR license.
Oo nga. You see the...
Dapat tabulin nyo ng PAGCOR.
Oo, dun sa big billboard sa EDSA, SLEX, you can see the
not even
PAGCOR.
billboard on your cell phone. Pwede ka mag-bet online eh. Ganun kadali.
Ano kaya yung binibisita ni Ami ng mga websites, no? Bakit yun yung mga algorithm,
lang
Ami?
sa akin eh. Wala akong kahilig-hilig sa gambling. They just pop up on your cell phone, di mo matanggal-tanggal yung advertisement.
Oo nga.
Kami sa college, sa high school dati, yung buklatan, parang Lucky Nine. Lucky Nine pero sa libro, yung page niya. Yung gano'n. Hindi mo nasubukan sa kanya, sa eskwelahan mo yun, no?
Ikaw lang yun.
But anyway, sorry, coming back to close off ko lang yung news on BBM, President Marcos visiting the White House. Of course, wala pang detalye on what's on the agenda, but we can surely expect trade and defense to be the talking points. Na-mention na to ni Philippine Ambassador to the States, si Babe Romualdez, na they have been trying to work out a meeting between the two presidents matagal na, for many months now.
Ang dating kasi, since nung naging presidente si Trump, parang very ambivalent sila dito sa policy sa South China Sea. Will it be the same as yung panahon ni Biden?
Oo.
Or
Will they
magbabago
scale
na?
up? Will they scale down?
Lalo na ng panahon ni Elon Musk. Nung siya yung pinaka-powerful na cabinet secretary. Siya yung parang pinaka-soft on China. Habang si Rubio, yung medyo hawkish.
hawk, yeah.
Pero ngayon, dahil wala na si
Elon,
baka yung dominant framework ni Rubio ang maging bahagi ng foreign policy. So dapat i-clarify
Hindi
nila yan.
medyo hawkish yan si Rubio. Ha?
He's very hawkish. He's very hawkish. That's true.
So ngayon, lilinawin nila yan. No? Lalo na tayo nasa frontline eh. Mismo sa ASEAN, tayo yung frontline. Diba? So kailangan naman ng counting assurance na hindi nyo naman kayo papabayaan. No? At yung letter tungkol sa tariff, parang hindi magandang indication. No? Kaya siguro yun yung isang main agenda nila, yung tariff.
But like you said, it just could be a front, right? To say na, okay, just before we meet, let's bump it up to 20% para naman may room to maneuver, right? Kung ang objective talaga is to bring it down to say 10 or 12.
Pero para siyang generic letter.
Oh, it was sent out to all the to several other countries.
Pinadala sa lahat na. Tapos binago lang yung heading.
Tapos let's make a deal yun eh. Let's make a deal.
The
art of the deal.
The art of the deal. That's right. That's in his book, right? Si Secretary of State Rubio was actually supposed to visit here in April. Hindi lang natuloy because, the Israel-Iran war flared up around that time. But he was supposed to come on the heels of Defense Sec Pete Hegseth. Di ba si Hegseth visited in late March. Tapos susunod sa kanya dapat si Rubio, but hindi nga natuloy because they were busy elsewhere. So it'll be interesting. So you're right. As far as we can tell, Secretary of State is fully still, supportive of the Philippines. Although he met the foreign minister, si Wang Yi din, Chinese foreign minister, over the weekend at the ASEAN foreign ministers meeting. And they seem to be...
Ang guess ko dyan, pagbalik ni Presidente, sabihin ng US, special kayo sa amin ha. Very special kayo. Binabaan namin yung tariff. Ibig sabihin, all out kami sa inyo dito sa issue ng South China Sea. No?
But in exchange?
Tapos si BBM naman, pagdating sa SONA, nakahanda na yung standing ovation dyan. I brought the bacon. Diba? Nababa ako sa 10-15%. Yung 20% na tariff. So, makikita mo na paano mong gagawin yan. Na parang di mo na kinakailangan pag-isipang maigi dahil you can see it coming 2 miles away.
Even so, if he's able to bring down the tariffs, that's still a good thing.
Of course.
Because he is going to be the first ASEAN leader to meet with President Trump face-to-face. As far as we know at this point, hindi pa nga sila nag-phone call right? Versus when President Marcos won, former President Biden was one of the first who called him to congratulate him. With Marcos Trump, as far as we know, unless it happened in secret, hindi pa sila nag-phone call, official phone call. So this is a big deal in the sense na, okay, out of all the ASEAN countries, he's gonna be the first one.
Ang tanong dyan, will it be the same as yung dati niya? Yung mga ginagawa kasi niya sa mga heads of state, parang yung kay Zelensky. Minimit niya sa White House, tapos nandun yung mga kwantas.
Nako, may Q&A.
Parang usap-usap, di ba? Yung South Africa leader, gano'n din ang ginawa niya. So, kay Macron, din ang ginawa niya. Gano'n din kaya yung gagawin niya rito?
Should
White House
Nako, President Marcos doesn't like
Dapat
open
lang
forums.
naman talagang yung head ng Philippines ang unahin niya dito sa ASEAN. Tayo lang naman ang treaty ally nila sa ASEAN eh.
Yeah.
Saka tayo
Kaya kailangan whoever is sitting here as president, dapat siya nang unahin niyang makipag-usap.
Saka tayo nag-engage, Ami.
Tayo nag-engage. But don't forget, we keep coming back.
Iba yung history natin with the US. We have a different history with the US.
Yes, for sure.
Kaya kailangan talaga pakita nila na may priority ko. Hindi masisira sila sa mga allies nila.
That's a fair point, but also don't forget we keep coming back to the fact na transactional itong presidente na to. And since we are not a huge trade or manufacturing or exporting country, what is there to offer, right? Apart from the defense facilities, right? So yes, treaty ally, pero if you have a president that's wholly transactional, And ang tinitingnan nila talaga is trade surplus, trade deficit. Trade surplus, trade deficit. The Philippines doesn't have that much to
Pero
offer.
in-engage din. I think Trump is fully aware of the rivalry between his country and China. Alam naman niya yun. Kaya nga medyo iniipit din niya yung... Remember kung gaano kalaki yung tariff niya sa China. Matagal na niya iniipit yan even before, even in his first presidency.
Yeah.
Talagang siya. In fact, parang parang medyo nawala sa script si Elon Musk eh. Ngayon nawala.
Kaya magbubuo na ng sariling political party.
What did he call it?
America.
He's gonna start his own.
Tingnan natin kung sino makuha niya.
Actually, kabawasan siya sa Republicans kung sakali. Sa next election.
Tingin mo?
No.
Dahil yung base naman niya, yung Republican base.
You know who else is starting to get lukewarm on Trump? Si Joe Rogan, whom we all know really rallied his supporters to vote for Trump.
Yeah.
Now he's saying na, parang sobra na yata yung ginagawa sa immigration, which is interesting to see. Parang Rogan is now speaking out about it.
Yeah. Hindi lang yun. Yung MAGA base niya, yung Make America Great Again, parang very intense yung kanilang critique dito sa mga foreign wars ni Trump. Itong sa Gaza policy, itong sa Iran, etc. Dahil insular sila eh. Ba't nakikialam tayo dyan?
Yeah.
No? Kaya,
I mean, he campaigned on ending the
peace.
two wars.
Peace.
Right? So instead of ending the two wars, nadagdagan pa. Now you've got Israel, Iran.
Yeah. Kaya yung mga base niya, lalo na yung MAGA, medyo galit. Dun sa, akala ko ba, magpa-prioritize tayo sa ating US?
Maraming disillusion. Apart from bringing down the tariffs to whatever figure it is, what do you think President Marcos should ask for?
Yung mga deportation.
Protection.
Immigrant. Maraming mga tinamaan ng Pilipino na hindi lang na-highlight. Na naapektuhan sa Hawaii, sa California, maraming naapektuhan dyan yung mga
Yung binawi
na
niya.
hindi na nga natin tinatamo at mga
Yung binawi niya
Marami
sa mga semiconductors. Yung inaprobahan
Chips
nung
Act.
panahon ni Biden.
Oo.
Tapos kinuha niya, nireject niya.
Oo.
Sana man lang, pag-usapan niyan dahil major investment sana yan.
Oo, naalala ko to. This is the CHIPS Act that
Yes.
we were supposed to benefit from.
Yeah, that's
kasi
$20 billion.
they want to build up yung AI chip-making capability here para mag-diversify away from Taiwan. But then, it was a question mark after Trump came in. We don't know if it's gonna
It
happen.
wasn't a question mark. He rejected it formally.
Pati yung Luzon Economic Corridor, I'm not sure what's gonna happen to it.
So, yung sinasabi dati ni Ambassador Romualdez na $100 billion in investment, dapat man lang may konti doon na pumasok. No, kundi
Wala pa?
It will all just be hype.
Yeah, it would all just be pledges. Okay, we've got our first guest ready today, and it's on a completely different topic. We're coming back to the issue of the missing sabungeros. So our first guest is Dr. Romel Papa. He is the Assistant Director of the NBI Forensic Science Research Services. Welcome to Storycon, Dr. Papa. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, Doc, good afternoon, Doc.
Hi, Doctor.
Nakamute po kayo,
po
sir.
kayo.
Good afternoon. Sorry, hindi ako ganun kateki, but good afternoon to everybody.
Pareho
Kami rin po, hindi.
Pareho tayo, Doc. Pareho tayo, Doc. Siguro, Doc, unang
Hindi
tanong...
Ronald, si Reg siya teki yan, si Reg. Kami lang hindi.
Pero wait, clarify lang natin, Doc. Sa inyo po babagsak yung investigation ng DNA, ng testing ng na-recover sa Taal Lake, tama po ba?
Yung nga itatanong ko, Reg, ano ba yung opisina niya?
Okay.
Paano, hindi natin masyadong kilala
yes.
yung opisina niya.
Correct.
Yan ba yung CSI natin, Doc? Yan ba yung ating CSI na napapanood?
Actually, sa National Bureau of Investigation, isa po kaming service. Kami po yung Forensic Science and Scientific Research Service. Actually po, yung service po namin lahat ng laboratory, nasa amin po ang DNA, forensic chemistry, question documents, yung mga nagpo-forge ng signature. Amin din po yung dactyloscopy, yung fingerprints. Sa amin din po ang medical legal. So, when it comes to, dati po ang pangalan namin technical service, ngayon po, forensic and scientific research service. So, under po sa amin ng DNA. To clarify lang po, marami po kasing nagtatanong. Last week po, ang service namin received an order from Director Santiago, the NBI Director, telling us to coordinate with the Department of Justice sa office po ni ASEC Eli Cruz regarding po sa case ng missing sabungeros. And also, based on an order by ASEC Miko Clavano, pinapunta po nila kami sa site last Friday to coordinate with Commodore Jeronimo Tovillas. Si Commodore Tovilla ang ground commander. Sila po ang in charge sa Philippine Coast Guard. And ang order po sa amin is to provide for forensic assistance. So, yun po ang binigay namin. Marami pong nagtatanong kung meron ba po kaming hawak na evidence. To date po, wala pa pong pinapadala sa amin.
So, kahit...
Doctor, kung bibigay sa... Kasi sinabi na ngayon ng PNP, mukhang nasa kanila lahat eh. Saka nagsalita na rin si PNP Chief kanina, sabi niya, si PNP Chief Torre, sabi niya, yung mga turnover daw sa kanila ay talaga human bones. So kung nasa PNP na yun, may sarili silang laboratory eh. Do they have to turn over the bones to you? Parang reconfirmation lang o restudy, o may sarili silang capability?
I'm sure the Philippine National Police also have a DNA laboratory. As regards po sa involvement ng NBI, ang order po sa amin is to stand by for forensic assistance, and that is what we're doing. If they will get in touch with us formally to give help, willing naman po kami. Willing po ang NBI, pero maghihintay po tayo ng order from the Department of Justice.
Doc, so more or less, may unity ang gobyerno, especially ang ating law enforcement, that these are human remains.
Sa ngayon po, hindi po makakapagsabi ang NBI kung human remains to kasi wala naman po kaming hawak. Kung sinasabi po ng PNP,
Wala.
siguro po na...
Nag-freeze. Hindi, sa kanila.
Nila po kasi yung mga evidence. Pero ang NBI po hindi kami pwedeng magsabi ng opinion dahil wala po sa amin yung evidence. It's internet. Hello, sir?
Dr. Papa,
Yes.
medyo choppy po yung linya natin.
Very weak ang internet namin. Sorry.
Okay.
Yung NBI, yung
Sorry,
internet
ang
ng
internet po
NBI,
namin
mabagal. DICT, baka naman.
Sorry.
You said you went to the site last week. So, as a forensic scientist, can you talk us through what you saw, what you witnessed, what you observed? Kasi, for instance, we know that si Dr. Raquel Fortun, who's the country's preeminent forensic scientist, has already made comments na she was worried about cross-contamination of the evidence, for instance. Kasi nilipat yata sa kabilang sako, sa ibang sako yung remains.
Yung isa.
Yung isa lang ba?
Oo, isa lang.
So she was worried about
Yung
that.
una.
Kayo po, ano po yung na-observe natin?
Sir, actually, ang ginawa lang po ng NBI doon is basically to observe. Provided with pictures, ang Philippine Coast Guard po ang nag-akyat ng evidence and sila po ang may pangangalaga. So, hindi ko po nakita personally, though yung mga pictures na sinend po ng aming staff ay pinapakita naman po yung technical divers ng Philippine Coast Guard. Inakyat po nila using their own bag para po maiakyat yung mga nakita nila sa ilalim ng lawa. Hello? Yeah.
Pero, Doctor,
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Doctor, gaano kalaking risk ng contamination kapag ganyan? Kasi medyo matagal na yan, Yung mga unang-unang nawalang sabungero, April 2021 pa. And until 2022 lang, so mga 3 to 4 years, no? Kung totoo nga na binaon sila doon, considering na yung tubig dyan sa Tala, I understand mataas yung sulfur content, ano? It's a volcano eh. Gaano kalaki yung risk ng contamination, no? Kung sakasakali lang, yung ganyan, nagdi-decompose yung remains in the water.
Actually, yes ma'am. Tinanong din po sa amin yan. Let's say degraded na, let's say may mga nangyari na dun sa buto. Ang sagot po namin dito ay if kami ang mag-i-examine, dun lang po kami makakapagbigay ng opinion na nararapat. Kasi mahirap po mag-speculate dahil nakikita lang natin sa litrato, nakikita lang natin sa video. Pero if ang NBI ang hahawak ng ebidensya at ipoproseso to, masasabi po, makakapagbigay po kami ng opinion. For now, we will not render any opinion dahil hindi naman po namin hawak yung evidence.
Sa inyong karanasan, Doc, yung gaano ka posible ang DNA test na pwede, no? Halimbawa sa mga bangkay na matagal nang kumaga nag-deteriorate yung kanyang condition, no? Meron bang sa karanasan nyo, hindi tungkol dito, ano yung pwede nyong sabihin sa amin, kwento nyo?
Meron po kaming mga cases na matagal na po, pero nakaka-extra kami ng DNA. Kaya nga po ang sinasabi ko, in the event na sa amin po dalhin, we will do our best to extract DNA material from whatever evidence they will give. Hindi lang po kami makapagbigay ng opinion ngayon kasi nga po, hindi namin hawak yung evidence. And there are a lot of factors. Kayo na rin po ang nagsabi. So, ang hirap po magbigay ng opinion sa nakita lang sa TV o nakita lang sa video, hindi po ganun ang forensic science. Hawak po dapat na.
Pero di ba, Doc, mahalaga rin sa inyong data analysis ng DNA na meron kayong database kung saan nyo titignan, kung saan nyo ikukumpara yung makukuha yung possible DNA. Yung
I think we lost him again.
Yung database nyo ba ay enough para halimbawa...
Hello?
Hello?
Niyo ako?
Hello?
Yes, Doctor.
Can you hear me?
Ang tanong
Can you hear me?
ang tanong ko, Doc, yung
I heard your
database.
question.
Yung database nyo.
I heard your question.
Okay.
Actually, in this case, specifically, if you're talking about the missing sabungeros, ang gagawin namin is to get a DNA profile of the relatives. Kung ito ay anak, kukuha kami ng DNA profile ng tatay at nanay. Kung hindi man po, kapatid. Yun po yung ibabangga natin sa makikita nating unknown DNA profile. So, yun po, doon namin i-compare sa known relatives.
Okay. We'll let you go, sir, since wala pa po kayong hawak na evidence. But we will circle back to you in case it does land on your desk, itong kaso na to.
Yes.
But thank you so much for talking to us. NBI Forensic Science Research Services Assistant Director, Dr. Romel Papa.
Salamat, Dr.
Thank you very much.
Doctor.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
By the way, as of today, 5 sacks have been retrieved. Sa pagkakaalam natin, there was another technical dive on Saturday, I think, or Sunday.
So, ano ng total?
5 na yung sacks na na-retrieve.
5.
And then, yun nga, what's curious about this is may mga bato or some sinkers yung mga sako, which I guess...
Pero yun ang sinabi ni Totoy, di ba? They were weighed down.
Oo. Yun na nga. That's what's very suspicious about this. Although sabi din ni General Nick Torre na, okay, it could be animal bones, it could be a mix of animal and human bones. We have to determine that at this point kasi consider the context, right? May fishing community yan. Where they were discovered.
Pero so far, parang yung mga sinabi ng whistleblower ay nakakatotoo. Sa inyong location, nilagyan ng bato yung mga sako, diba, etc. So medyo nagkakaroon siya ng credibility. Of course, hindi pa yan kompleto.
Could on the other side of it, could it also be planted is the other question that some people are raising, right? Kasi parang napaka-fantastic naman na tamang-tama yung...
Pero parang hirap
tamang-tama
ng planted yung decomposition ng mga katawan, yung location, no, yung parang ang hirap gawin
Bulok na eh.
Ang hirap gawin no, hirap gawin yan. Yung
Bulok na.
masyadong conspiracy theory kung meron
Ako lang pumili ka sa conspiracy theory.
hindi sa ganyan.
Hindi dito. Alam, kasi sometimes when you're reading a murder mystery, right? O kaya nakikinig sa podcast,
parang pine-frame up mo lang yung
you have to
yung mga
wonder
concern.
at the sequence of events.
Maghahata ka ng napakaraming
Sumagot
bangkay.
ng Coast Guard dyan, Sumagot ang Coast Guard dyan over the weekend kasi sila yung tinatamaan. Siyempre, kung nag-planting, kasama sila. Sabi nila, hindi kami magre-risk ng mga tao namin. Malalim daw yan saka medyo delikado. Sabi ko nga, mahirap lumangoy dyan sa lake na yan It's a strange ecosystem. Sabi niya, delikado talaga. Sabi nila, di namin i-risk buhay ng mga tao namin para lang mag-planting. Yan ang sabi ng Coast Guard sa responding to those criticisms.
Yes, at saka kung magpa-plant sila, parang masyadong maraming makakakita. No? Mismo yung may-ari ng palaisdaan, yung mga katiwala doon, makikita sila. So masyado siyang fantastical.
Kaya nga, that's what I'm saying. It's napaka-fantastic na sequence of events. But I don't know, maybe I've just been watching too many murder shows.
Yes.
But we have to go for a break right now. You are watching Storycon on One News. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
This is the Story Conference Group or the Storycon Group.
We've got the developing news and the stories behind the headlines. Welcome back to the Storycon. I'm Regina Lay. Still with me, Ami Pamintuan of the Philippine Star and Ronald Llamas, a resident political pundit. Also joining us this afternoon, we've got UP College of Law Assistant Professor, Attorney Paulo Tamase. Welcome back to Storycon, Attorney. Thanks for making
Hi,
time
Attorney.
for us.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me.
We had to call you back in, Attorney, because may konting developments in this impeachment case that we need you to help make sense for us, chief of which is yung Supreme Court ordering the House to respond to some of the questions that were raised by the case filed on the other side. What did you make of it?
What was that about, Attorney? Parang kahit kami mga hindi learned, nagulat eh. Parang yung letter, binasa ko ng 3 beses eh. Sabi ko, parang kwento parang insulting sa House
Ano yung interpretation mo, Attorney?
Yeah, well, you just have to give the caveat that we really can't comment on the merits of the petition. So, but as an academic, there are a few things that we can observe here. The first is just the sheer fact that the Supreme Court already seemed to have acted on the petition is a big step compared to its relative silence since February when the petitions were first filed. It seems that the supplemental petition, which more closely focuses on the supposed fourth impeachment complaint argument, is the one that's being heard right now. The second observation, I think, is that regardless of how the Supreme Court decides the case ultimately, you now have another opening for the Senate to possibly delay the trial, which they will probably phrase as they will wait for the resolution of these issues before resolving themselves whether they can hold trial, which I think would be a mistake. If we look at past impeachment practice, this is not the first impeachment trial where a case was filed with the Supreme Court while that impeachment trial is pending. So in the impeachment of Chief Justice Corona, the same thing happened to question a subpoena, I think, for his dollar accounts. But the Senate continued to hold trial nonetheless until the Supreme Court came to a decision that prohibited, or I think a temporary restraining order that prohibited the Senate from seeking those bank records. So those are preliminary observations.
So balance sheet, Attorney, tingin mo positive itong ginawa ng Supreme Court? Dahil parang may 3 points na medyo questionable eh. Halimbawa, yung separation of powers, yung political question doctrine, at saka yung presumption of regularity. Bakit mo tatanungin yung House na kung nabasa at naintindihan yung impeachment na final nila? Parang nagulat ako ron. Parang iba yung indication. Tapos nakita mo yung Senate sa kanilang statement, parang tuwan-tuwa sila eh dito sa nilabas ng Supreme Court. No? Yes, tingin ko yung baka nga yung best case dyan, yung ma-delay. Pero paano pag nag-decision yung Supreme Court before the SONA or before the trial, then masaya yung Senate dahil hindi sila madadami if you do, dami if you don't, no? Dito sa issue ng impeachment. Kaya at least for now, parang pabor sa kanila itong lumabas na ito.
Siguro, Ronald, to answer that, those 2 points. No? So on the first one, I think surprising yung tenor ng Supreme Court because of 2 things. The first is, as you mentioned, the political character of impeachment. And that is precisely why kadalasan hindi nakikialam yung Korte Suprema sa impeachment until may klaro na kaso. Kasi sa pananaw nila, sa sistema natin, impeachment is a process that is left to Congress, both the House and the Senate. Hindi nakikialam yung Korte Suprema kasi baka mahila siya into what scholars would call the political thicket. No? Maipit siya dun sa away politika, hindi na siya makalabas. And I think the startling thing is how detailed the request for information was. especially given yung recent na mga decision ng Korte Suprema where sinasabi nila na hindi sila trier of facts. No? Parang hindi yung Korte Suprema yung lugar kung saan nag-check talaga nila kung totoo ba o hindi yung isang factual na allegation. And sometimes the length of the resolution and yung granular detail that it goes into seems to suggest that. The second point is, siguro kung natutuwa yung Senado or baka more exactly natutuwa yung ibang senador dun sa development kasi magkakaroon na naman sila ng dahilan na escape device to avoid the impeachment. Pebrero pa na file to, no? And while it was filed at the last day of the session, it came to the Senate a few hours before nila natapos yung session. Ginamit yung recess as an excuse to move it to June. When the June session reopened, ginamit yung urgent legislative business para iusog siya to a later date in June. And then when finally na-convene siya because of academic pressure, civil society pressure, biglang na-remand na naman siya sa House. So I think may recognition yung Senado na politically popular kasi talaga yung Vice President. But sa sistema natin ng accountability, hindi yun dahilan para hindi desisyonan yung may importanteng tanong na to. No? So impeachment is precisely designed as a process na kahit popular yung leader na under trial, may obligasyon yung dalawang kapulungan ng Kongreso na magdesisyon whether or not guilty or dapat ba ma-convict yung isang official for disqualifying offenses. And so that would be my response to Ronald's question.
Professor, ang tanong ko, ano kaya yung objective kasi may mga nagsasabi ngayon na itong Supreme Court overreach na naman yan. Ano kaya yung objective ng acting on that petition in that way? Kasi parang, paano kung sabihin nila, ay mali yung ginawa niyo, can they tell the Senate or can they tell Congress, huwag nyo na ituloy impeachment kasi walang basehan pala eh. Anong objective nung ganong pag-step in ng
I'll bring this back to a forum that the UP Law hosted in February, where we asked this question to Senator Drilon in particular.
Yeah.
Kasi kami, naintindihan naman namin from the legal side na may power yung Supreme Court to intervene in this question if may violation talaga ng Constitution. That's how our system works. But under our system also, just because may power yung Supreme Court doesn't mean that it should step in.
Yeah.
That's what we would call prudence, or as Ronald mentions, yung political question. So I'm not very sure actually what the objective is, and I think from the ethical side it would be improper for me to assume that the court would have certain objectives. It may be possible na matter of course lang talaga na issue yung resolution. So I think rather than and while the Supreme Court is a legitimate object of public criticism, it's one of our many government institutions, the attention should not be moved away from the Senate. Kasi there is some reason to pressure the Senate na despite the Supreme Court taking action, there is no reason for you to delay the trial further. The court has not issued a preliminary injunction. The Supreme Court has not issued the TRO. And therefore, like the Corona impeachment, the Senate should assert its independence and its supremacy over questions of impeachment and proceed to trial until pigilin siya ng Supreme Court. And let, therefore, the House deal with the objections in the Supreme Court independently.
Attorney, mataas yung binibigyan yung standard sa Senate eh. Baka masyadong mataas, no? Pero
siya lang po yun, attorney.
Pero attorney, sino ba ponente? Ba't hindi lumalabas yung pangalan ng ponente? Yung gumawa niyang letter na yan. Sino yan? Usually, nakapangalan naman yan, di ba?
Well, nagkakaroon ng ponente in law pag may decision na mismo. Until the decision is written, there would be what we call a member in charge in the Court according to their practice. But typically, the member in charge does not issue or sign resolutions. It's an unsigned resolution. Yung clerk of court talaga yung nag-i-issue. Kasi parang procedural lang yung motion. But I understand the concern because I think compared to usual procedural motions in cases like this, setting cases for oral arguments, etc., medyo detailed yung request, which is unique and worth observing as a fact lang in itself. So baka kaya din may curiosity ng onti kung sino yung member in charge. But the important thing to note is if you look at the last part of the resolution, nakasulat doon na one justice did not take part. I think si Justice Kagiwa. One justice was on leave, si Justice Singh, and one was on wellness leave. I forget the third person. But it means that it was a resolution that was approved by the court.
Oh.
And therefore, it's hard to, it might not be, or it might be premature now to pick details from the fact that na-issue siya, just as a caveat.
Oh, so this was not the Supreme Court en banc. This was just a chamber.
No, it's the en banc.
It's en banc. Okay.
It's the en banc, but there were 3 people who did
Who
not
were-
participate
participate.
effectively. In issuing the resolution.
You said that the mere fact that the Supreme Court has acted on it is already a big deal. What were you personally expecting for them to? Because considering all the big high-profile cases that they're dealing with right now, you weren't expecting for them to respond to this right away, or the pace by which they responded was very fast for you.
Not at all. I think it's normal for the court to actually issue orders in relation to cases that are pending before them. And most of them we don't see because a large number of the cases that the court deals with aren't political. So every time that the court issues something like this in a high-profile case, of course it will draw attention to it. So the fact that it was released wasn't surprising to me. From an legal academic's perspective, what was surprising to me was the tenor of the resolution and the things that it asks the House to report.
Got it.
Because it asks for facts. At least as how I would respectfully understand it. And the facts generally, this is a court that has emphasized that it is not a trier of facts, that those facts belong to other places like the lower courts, etc. And it would use that often as an excuse, as a device not to handle or take on a case. But perhaps because of the unique character of impeachment, that the court was also pressed to simply ask for information directly from the House. Although I do recognize Sec. Ronald's point about the presumption of regularity.
Pero attorney, kung fact, you're saying trial facts, but the facts are related to the impeachment kasi. Kaninong korte pwedeng pumunta yung mga ganong question? Yung halimbawa, ano bang papel ng Sergeant at Arms ng House? Hindi siya masasagot ng lower court, di ba? So, kaya ganun ka-detalye. Actually, yan yung tinatanong ng camp nila Duterte. Linawin nyo nga sa amin na yung 1-year violation niya, di ba? Napaka-detalyado talaga nung case eh. So, may basihan din ba naman ng Supreme Court na, sige na nga, tanungin na natin to para ma-settle yan. Kasi in fact, Justice Carpio was saying, may ruling na eh. Yung 1 year starts at when you forward it to the Committee on Justice. Meron ng president, di ba?
That was it, the Francisco case?
Bakit ang hindi kasi nag-act daw yung Sergeant at Arms? Paano yung mga ganong detalye? Saan mo tatanungin yun? You cannot ask it sa regional trial court eh.
Yung jurisprudence here ba is the Francisco case yata yun? The Justice Carpio cited,
Kaya nga, pag ganyan, pwede sabihin ng Supreme Court, kanino pa tatanungin yan? Kung pupunta sa lower court, baka lalong matagal, di ba? Di diretso na natin sa amen.
Yes, actually, patas ko yun na problem, no? So there is this long line of decisions becoming more prominent in the Supreme Court where they refuse to take on cases kapag may factual issues. In our system kasi, hindi sila trier of facts, you throw that to the lower court. But you have a very special difficulty now because the facts involve Congress itself. So
constitutional question siya.
Yes. And while the trial courts and the Court of Appeals theoretically have the authority to take on petitions against Congress. May power kahit ng RTC to do that. The reality is that the status of the Congress would probably call for a higher court to do it. No? Kasi co-equal branches sila in terms of status. So perhaps the reason why the Supreme Court was forced to issue that resolution was also because of the realities lang of the parties before it. No? You're right, Ami, no, na baka tumagal lalo yung kaso eh. Ibato siya sa baba. So there are a lot of possibilities that would inform us as to why the Supreme Court issued a very detailed request for information, essentially.
Pero mahalaga yung sinabi mo, attorney, yung tenor in a very politically charged landscape, very polarized. Kung ganyan lang tenor mo, parang may iba kang hugot. Diba? Parang usually nakikita ko yung ganyan mga tanong kung yung tinatanong ay mentally or physically incapacitated. Parang nabasa mo ba? Naintindihan mo ba yung pinirmahan mo? Yung wisdom ng pagpirma mo? Usually yan sa
Did
mga
you have all your faculties around you when you
Oo,
signed?
parang hindi lang siya simpleng tenor no? Parang insulting yung ganyang klaseng tenor. No? So, saan ba nanggagaling yung ganyang klaseng tenor? Di ba? Yun yung very antagonistic. No?
I get the concern, especially because of, I think, statements made by some of the prosecutors that, parang they're being asked essentially things that the other side would ask. Yung things that hinahanap mismo ng Duterte camp or VP Sara's camp. And I think, recognize the validity of those concerns. As for why the court gave it in that detailed manner, it's I mean, we can go with what I think Ronald is suggesting. It might be a way of micromanaging the House, but the other way that it can be read in good faith is simply that, that perhaps the court has no option anymore and cannot answer the questions without those information. There is a presumption of regularity that we follow, and Congress, especially as a co-equal branch, mataas talaga yung presumption that's given to them. But that is a presumption. It means that it can be controverted, it can be countered by evidence, and perhaps doon natutulak yung Supreme Court. It's a little precedented, as with many things in this impeachment, walang solutions often in established law because of maneuvers of either side. No? But it's the reality that we're living with. We have the Supreme Court now looking into this. And I think it's important to note that while the court, would be accountable to the decision it would reach eventually, to history, to the people, important nga for us to always look back to the Senate. Because if we're looking at a delay again, the delay will not come from the Supreme Court. The delay will come from the Senate. It's the Senate deciding not to proceed with the case kasi nag-aantay pa sila sa Supreme Court. And there's just basis for that right now.
Well, that's what you were saying. You're seeing another window for the Senate to delay this impeachment trial. They can't say, okay, well, we want to wait for this case to resolve itself. We want to wait for the Supreme Court resolution. And if they do that, would that be well within their rights? Although I recognize as well, sui generis nga daw tong impeachment, right? It is a case on its own. But can anyone challenge their reasoning if they do come back and say, okay, well, we don't want to hold the trial right now. We want to wait for the resolution?
Well, frankly, I think it would be within their power. It would be within their power to decide that because of the difficulty of the constitutional issues that were raised here, which I think as an academic are not difficult at all, no? But it would be possible for them to argue it. And if they do, then it goes back again to the Supreme Court. So you can ask the Supreme Court to clarify, for example, that it would not stay the proceeding. But it becomes more complicated if we do that. And I think if you look at the longer arc of this impeachment, what are very serious issues of alleged irregularities by the Vice President are being muddled in all of the legalese that was not intended for impeachment. Because impeachment as a process in the Philippines is designed to be digestible by non-lawyers. That you don't need to call in a legal talking head to explain a lot of the procedures kasi dapat malinaw siya. It's very clear in the Constitution.
Yeah.
The rules of the impeachment court are very short compared to the rules of court that I and my law students study. So doon na naman tayo. It's again that theme of obfuscating what are very clear issues.
Yeah.
And it's important to go back always to that truth-telling process that impeachment was designed to be.
Here's hoping. We will leave that there for now. But thank you so much for your insights today and for joining Storycon UP College of Law Assistant Professor Paolo Tamase. Thank you, Attorney. We learned a lot.
Salamat, attorney.
Thank you.
Thanks, attorney.
Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for joining Storycon. Ami Pamintuan, Editor-in-Chief of the Philippine Star, and Ronald Llamas, a resident political pundit na napaka-subdued today. Wow! I was not expecting this.
Legal eh.
Legal.
Learned.
Hindi ka kasi. Join us again tomorrow 4 p.m. for Storycon. I'm Regina Lay. We are One News, all sides, all the time. Thanks for watching.
This is the Story Conference Group or the Storycon Group.